All right, I'm going to try this again. So, I tried this before and it didn't work out really well. So, basically, what I'm doing is I'm working over an initial sketch. The original sketch was done in Procreate, and now I'm doing the final version. This artwork appears on a barrel select bourbon that I did with Backbone Bourbon out of Indiana. So, all the line working that I'm doing now is either black or a really deep brown. And that's working over a layer on top of the initial sketch. You can see the way I was able to change the size of the bird to make the bird bigger, because this picture, this image shows up very small on the side of the bottle of the bourbon that I had done. The brush that I'm using for the line work is a DigiPen, which is nice because it works with pressure. So the harder you push, the thicker your line, and the less pressure, the thinner your line. So you're able to create almost like brush-like lines, but not quite brush-like. It's a lot more pen-like. The shading that I'm doing now, most everything on this particular piece, I think the initial drawing was done with an HB pencil brush. And then I think most of the shading that I'm doing now is done with a Coquille brush. Coquille is nice because it gives you a heavy texture, and it reminds me very much of the old school flash from like the 70s, 60s, and like probably early 70s, late 70s work. Like Jack Rudy, a lot of the West Coast dudes used to use the Coquille board to work off of with pencil and ink, and you'd get a really nice texture to it. Most of the stuff I try to create in Procreate and digitally, I try to make it look more pencil-like than airbrush-like. I don't want to say it's easier to pull off the airbrush thing, but in all honesty, it kind of is. I've worked with airbrush probably for almost 40 years now, 35 years, and I've never tried to make my airbrush paintings look like airbrush. I've always wanted to add more texture to them and not so much just eliminate that super smooth, kind of plasticky, fake look. Because I'm infatuated with oil paints, acrylic paints, all that stuff, but I've always used the airbrush, so it's a lot easier to use that as opposed to picking up a brand new medium. So you try to make the airbrush work in a medium, in a way that other mediums look. And I suppose I'm doing the exact same thing with the Procreate here. I'm not really wanting it to look like a computer, rendered image. I want it to look like a hand-drawn image. I don't think you get that too much with the iPad. I think it's a lot more difficult to kind of actually pull that off, because the fact is, I mean, it is easier to kind of fall into the tricks that it offers, and unfortunately, that's not really. I don't really want to do that. I'd rather it look like something I did versus something that everybody else can do. You know what I mean? So that's just one of those things with the iPad. I try to make it look more like mine versus what everybody else is doing, which is probably, that's probably why I don't pay attention to a lot of like tutorials and stuff online. I wish I had more of a mindset for that, but unfortunately, I don't. I probably should pay a little bit more attention. If you notice a lot of the ways that I'm working here, I am actually selecting certain areas, like the lips, the nose, the eyes. Those areas were selected, and then I'm filling in layers. I usually work with my line drawing being the first layer, my black shading being the next layer, and then all the colors and shading consequently go below that. And then it's nice with that because I'm able to eliminate full layers and not feel like I've wasted time and have to go over something and repair something. With this, you could just eliminate a layer and not have to worry about what the damage you have done to the piece. The other nice thing is to be able to fool around with different values and stuff like that, and be able to figure out where what changes you need to make to kind of get things really rolling and make it really pop. I think that the one complaint I have with this particular piece is the fact that all the values were not laid out initially. If I had done all my black work right out of the gate, I think I would have been able to see what my values looked like without having to work it section to section to section. I think because I had a full sketch underneath the piece, it made it a little easier for me to think about it and not have to worry about what I was doing to the piece. I figured my sketch was already down, so I'm already good, no big deal. I'm just going to work on top of that. But I think if I had worked my black and gray values up first, and then decided to work on top of that, as opposed to just working with my sketch as being my value, but my value base, I think it would have ended up with a bit more of a richer piece. I'm not complaining about the piece. I actually do dig the piece. But like I said, this image shows up very, very small on the side of a whiskey bottle. And it could have been a little bit more poppy. It could have been something that stood out a little bit brighter without it being like, without things being lost, like details being lost, like having to make the bird larger and stuff like that. Those were necessities based on the fact that the image is really, really, really small. This image is probably about a year, almost nearly a year old now. So I'd like to think that I've come a little bit further with my iPad Procreate skills. So while I'm not going to say I'm great at it, I've gotten better than this. But like I said, most of the brushes on this are all DigiPen for most of my line work. Different colors obviously for the line work to give me different effects and stuff like that. And then for the actual shading and stuff, it's all HB pencil brush and the Coquille brush. I have adjusted both of those. I have a much smaller, finer grain pencil and a much smaller, finer grain Coquille. I will admit, though, I am a complete retard when it comes to working with my brushes and making adjustments on them. So while I say that they are smaller and finer, that is far from the truth because they're definitely not as small and fine as they could be. I wish I was better at it, but I'm not. I simply am not. So, what do we got going on here? Okay, we had a bit of a dead spot there because for whatever reason it was just showing dead air. There was nothing going on with the image, so I kind of maybe skipped forward a little bit. I apologize for the dead spot there. So so most of the black shading is done on the girl's face. I'm now working on the bird. Again, I'm not going to say I'm great at values and stuff like that. I am working from some sketches, obviously. The bird does look like it's got a bit of a skull thing going on. It's something I've been fooling around with. I will admit that is some imagery I've bit from other artists. I do like that whole live dead thing. It works really well for me, and it works really, really good with the voodoo girl that I got going on here. I think it should be known that I'm not looking to create a Mexican Day of the Dead girl. This is more of my own thing. It's something I've been doing since 1994, 96 probably. It's more of a voodoo kind of like, New Orleans, voodoo girl. So that's kind of what I got going on here. And I'm now just refining the bird. So the bird is the only thing that kind of breaks the whole monochromatic the tone. You can see the way I'm like kind of keeping things super, super, super simple. I'm laying over a lot of different like simple tones, light tones, and then I'm just trying to bring out highlights. The idea behind this was to keep it really, really, really simple. Again, it's a small image. I want it to really stand out. I still admit that I think that it's a bit on the dark side, and I did do some simple cheats with the highlights and whatnot on the bird. But realistically, I think it worked out really, really well for what it was. So just kind of fine-tuning things, doing certain pops, trying to make things happen, whatever. Adding some textures in the background. I added some textures and some distressing on the image, and I hope you guys dig it. And that's the last of it. And that's all I got. So my little heart motif goes in the top corner, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. I don't know how educational it was. I'm going to work on more of these, and I hope you guys stay tuned. Take care. Bye.